3, 2, 1. Well, welcome back to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Christopher Holmes, host and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Well, today I have another phenomenal guest. This man is multifaceted in a lot of areas, but specifically we're going to talk about racial equity today. Who am I talking about? I am talking about my guest, none other than Dr. Bryan Daniels, who is a CEO Action for Racial Equity Research Fellow in the areas of, listen to this, education, public safety, healthcare, and economic opportunity. This is going to be a jam-packed, action-filled nugget dropper of an interview, and I can't wait to have him share with you. Welcome, Dr. Daniels.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you for having me on the show, and far too generous compliment in your intro, but thank you.
Well, listen, I want to dive right in. So why not start by telling our viewers and our listeners a little bit about you? Where does it all begin for you?
Great. Yeah, happy to tell you about that journey. It all begins in Jacksonville, Florida. My racial equity work started with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, otherwise known as the NAACP. I had the fortune of being the NAACP Youth Council president. I must have been about 17 or 18 years old.
Wow.
And it was a remarkable experience. Again, it was about really learning about the struggle of civil rights, the sacrifices that have been made for us as Black people, for me as a young Black man, and then recruiting and bringing along younger people, people about my age at that time, to join the civil rights movement and keep that journey moving forward.
All right, so we got to stop. 17 years old.
Sure. 17 or 18, yeah, somewhere along that line.
Okay, 17, 18-year-olds just don't walk into that type of work. So what sparked you? What was the interest?
Interesting. I'd always had a passion for learning about the civil rights movement and the people that were involved in the movement. Of course, Dr. King and others that we know, Malcolm X up north. But I was interested in a person, I think he was the dean of the law school at Howard, Charles Houston. And so I remember reading about, Attorney Houston and his work, Thurgood Marshall, and their work. And I was really motivated at one point in my life to pursue a career in legal studies. And so, again, it was a passion that, I developed probably at the age of 13 or 14 years old. I was an avid reader, still an avid reader today. And but I'll tell you this, I'll quantitate that. I did nothing in school to pursue that academic career, obviously. But again, that NAACP experience came at a unique time in my life. I was actually attending community college at the time, really getting my life headed in the right direction. I had an event or something that occurred. I felt like I had been treated unjust and I had nowhere to go, I thought, other than to the NAACP. And so as I began to meet the members of the organization, and I think they saw something in me, my potential at the time, they thought it would be a good idea if, possibly I, ran for president of the Youth Council and ultimately prevailed and had a wonderful experience. It really laid the foundation for, again, the work that I'm doing today and the work that I've always been passionate about, which are racial equity issues for all of my life.
So now I really want to ask a question because I think this is going to frame our conversation for the work you're doing now. So as a young Black male working with the United Negro College Fund, and you're out there working with the
NAACP.
I'm sorry, NAACP. You're working with NAACP, you're working with the youth. Did you find that work challenging to get people to commit and support the beliefs that you guys embodied as an organization?
Yeah, let me preface also that I was a young man also. I was sort of a knucklehead youth at the time as well. And so, yes, it was difficult because, again, this was probably in the late 1980s and we're far beyond the traditional civil rights movement. Injustices have and will incur and were incurring then. And so we were kind of in a dormant period, and trying to keep that struggle, keep that fight going. I can still think about or remember occasions when I marched. We fought for issues related to, I think, minority contractor set-asides in the city. There was a city council person who had made some inappropriate remarks. And I can still remember, marching with other advocates throughout the streets of downtown Jacksonville, calling for change. But again, at the time I was young, I don't know if we, recruited the masses of young people, but I do think that it laid the foundation in many of us to continue this work well into our adult years.
Yeah, and now look at you, still fighting, still in the work. So let's talk about. So now we fast forward. You've aged a couple of years here or there, and now you are an action and research fellow, focusing on racial equity. So talk a little bit about that work.
Yeah. So the work that I do today, it's with an organization called CEO Action for Racial Equity. And in fact, I'm on somewhat of a sabbatical from my parent company and my home organization, which is an electric utility provider in Missouri and Illinois. The name of the company is Ameren. So I was selected to do this work on behalf of the company, as well as on behalf of the community, and within the fellowship on the behalf of 47 million Black Americans in the United States. And so this fellowship focuses specifically on Black community, right, and transforming Black communities around the country to eliminate racial disparities. And so it's anchored in 4 areas, as you mentioned earlier: healthcare, education, public safety, and economic empowerment. I've spent the majority of my time working specifically on issues related to economic empowerment. And so it's been very rewarding. I've had to revisit many parts of my past. I've had to, study up on some of the dynamics and some of the context that, have led us to, the issues that exist today and the problems that are inherent in communities, throughout the United States. And let me add also that this fellowship was actually started after the unfortunate death of George Floyd. So this is a corporate response, a corporate contribution, obviously, to improving society, a major commitment. I'm one of more than about 200 fellows that come from organizations and companies across the United States that are doing this work full time. We're dedicated to, solving these issues and addressing public policies that have been unfair and unjust as it relates to outcomes for Black Americans.
Have you found something in the area where you lived in terms of policy that you were even unaware of, that now you're like, we really need to address some of these?
Oh man, how much time do we have?
Come on, I want to hear it, because I know here in Atlanta, I know that we have it as well.
Yeah, so I'll tell you this. Within the fellowship, I look at financial institutions, right? Traditional financial institutions, and as we know, they're underrepresented in Black communities, right? And so, the banks have left the communities, the credit unions have left our communities, and so we're marginalized in the sense that we have to depend on alternative sources of access to capital, right? And we know how extreme and how dangerous that can be. It doesn't allow Black families to acquire wealth over a long period of time, and they're predatory. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And so they're disadvantaged. They're not. Black people are at a disadvantage when it comes to growing wealth and accumulating wealth and purchasing homes. So that has been my primary area of focus within the fellowship. But I'll tell you, over the last few months, I really gravitated to the causes of these particular issues, right? And so, I used to be really adamant to talk about, slavery. Slavery is the foundation, the cause of the issues that Black people have today. But I do understand that is layered, right? You can go back to the public policies, the New Deal policies of the 1930s, and how that transformed this country from the 1930s through about the 1960s, right? When white Americans accumulated, enormous amounts of wealth, and Black folk were redlined, could not get access to loans, and couldn't make home purchases. And then there's another layer to it also, sort of this growth of the urban ghetto, right? And the impacts that it has had on society, our Black males and our Black families. And so it's a multifaceted dimension. And all of these policies have had some negative effects, obviously, on our community.
This is a very tough conversation. I want to ask you this question.
Sure.
I hear a lot of talk as we talk about economic disparity and inequities in America for Black Americans, and we always talk about Black Wall Street, right? We've done it before, we can do it again. But when I hear you talk about the layeredness of policies that have been created to create challenges for us, is it possible that we as a community can dig ourselves out of this by ourselves?
We can't dig ourselves out by ourselves because obviously we did not get into this by ourselves. And so again, through the fellowship that I'm working on, it is, corporate America saying that, hey, at the end of the day, we need positive change. There have been negative outcomes, right? And we witnessed them on television. We witnessed them right before our eyes. And these are the worst situations or the worst examples of the worst outcomes that we experience. But I was actually thinking this morning, earlier today, what about the outcomes that we drive by every day? When we're driving in underrepresented communities and we're driving through marginalized communities, we see the impact, but we don't particularly think about it, in the worst terms. But people live in conditions that are undesirable. And again, these issues were not created alone by Black community, and it's going to take a lot of people to help address these issues and solve these problems, for generations to come. You think about this. I mean, we're here just for a small amount of time, but think about, the changes that have occurred in our lifetime and prior to our lifetime to have opportunities that we have today. And we really want to help ensure, or we should, as our civic duty, do something to ensure that future generations don't find themselves in the same situation and that we are not moving backwards.
So as part of the fellowship, where is it important for you guys to provide information and access to families and communities about the things that you are now aware of?
So we're working more at a macro level. And
Okay.
So I was just talking about this yesterday. We're working sort of at the policy level. We're working with organizations that have really been at the forefront and in the front lines of doing this work, for 50, 60, 70 years. And so we're, helping to identify opportunities to support those organizations, but also, what we can do as an organization using our corporate muscle and the influence that we have as it relates to, many of the big companies that are involved with this fellowship.
Great. I'm glad you said that. So this was my next question. So when we think about, here you are in this fellowship, chosen by your company to be involved, what should the corporate role be in creating space for more diversity, maybe for increasing economic wealth in Black families? We hear DEI all the time, but is just having more Black and brown people in these positions, is that enough? What more can they be doing?
So let me talk about this within the scope of the fellowship, for one. So we have public policy solutions, but then we have what we call social contracts, right? And within the social contracts arena, we have three solutions. One focuses on supplier diversity and business diversity, right? Doing more business, allowing more smaller companies to come in and provide services, to the larger companies. And so we're talking about Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. We also have an HBCU initiative. And that initiative really looks at sort of the talent pipeline, but it also looks at some of the philanthropic opportunities that exist where corporations can, help financially support institutions, HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. And then we have sort of this fair chance, second chance opportunity that looks at, what can organizations do to hire people who have been formerly incarcerated, those who have been impacted, by the justice system. How can we get those individuals back into the workforce, either with our organizations, the bigger organizations, or through some of the companies that, to provide us with services and so forth through our supply diversity and business diversity initiatives. So within the fellowship, we do recognize that there's an obligation and opportunity for companies to play a positive role and basically, help those who have been disenfranchised or those that have been impacted by disparities enter into the workplace or get an education or open businesses and sustain those businesses. And so to your question of DE&I, bringing more people of color into organizations, I do think that there has to be some structure, there has to be some processes in place, at the end of the day to allow people of color to be successful in these organizations. I often say to myself, and I've often been the only in the room, right? And what an uncomfortable feeling. I've been the only sometimes doing my academic journey at some of the institutions that I've attended, and I've been the only in the workplace. And it requires a certain amount of fortitude and resilience to continue to come back each and every day. But again, there needs to be policies in place. There needs to be some structure in place to allow organizations to grow those numbers, but also retain those individuals so they can be the best representation of themselves, add value to the organization, and do their job successfully.
Let me ask you this. How does the 18-year-old resurface inside of you right now as you do this work?
That's a great question. It's been so long, I don't even remember 18 for the most part. But again, I'm just as passionate about this work today as I was then. I always try not to do this work from a place of privilege, right? So I do recognize that, physically I've changed, mentally I've changed, but at heart, I'm still the same individual. My foundation is still the upbringing that allows me to say that I've had the lived experience of many Black people that have faced obstacles in their lives, and I've overcome those obstacles. I was not born with a silver spoon, so I'm still passionate about doing the work, and I try to stay connected to the work that I do as often as possible in the community. Just looking and observing, what's happening in the community, et cetera. So I'm just as passionate today as I was at 18 years old.
So this is a no-brainer. So I'll make a statement first and then follow that up with a question. I know after this, you will not return back to work the same. So all in your mind, what are you already thinking? Because I know there's something stirring as you do this work that you want to go back and start maybe something in your company.
Yeah, I want to do work that is meaningful and impactful, right? And I'm fortunate. I always say this, and I think this, that my company is a little bit smaller than some of the organizations that are involved in the CEO Action for Racial Equity Fellowship. And so we're really community-based, right? We're an electric utility provider, and you think about electricity and what that means, for anyone's household. And so it's an essential service. It's a basic service that is essential to, ensuring that you live a productive life and that you can, go to work and, take care of your family. And so we have a lot of programs in place. We do a lot in the community to help, people who struggle to maintain their service. We do a lot to make sure that the community itself is growing and that the community itself is expanding and being as prosperous as possible. And so I see a lot of my work coming back into my organization when this fellowship is over in October of 2022, helping and benefiting the communities that my company serves. And so that's a tremendous responsibility and obligation. But again, I've always been community oriented. And, I want to see not only Black folk, but those who are underserved, those who struggle, basically, rise up and do better in life and achieve, their life's goals.
So I know this journey, you started out in North Florida with communications, and you went to Webster and management, and you got the PhD. Talk a little bit. Why was that important for you?
The PhD for me was really just sort of this culmination of being a lifelong learner, right? And being a lifelong learner did not happen. It did not naturally occur for me. Yeah. I've had to overcome a number of challenges, many of them self-inflicted as a young man. And I have to tell you, I was a person who said that, I'm never going to college. I never had any desire to attend college. Now, preface that back to the point that I want to be an attorney, but that's the disconnect, right? And so a lot of times, unfortunately, and I'll say this, as a Black male, as a young Black male, we don't have people to kind of bridge those gaps and help us understand what it takes to, get to that next level by example, right? And so again, it wasn't until I started attending community college that I realized at the end of the day, I could go further. I could receive my my bachelor's degree, I could go on and pursue my master's degree, etc. And that's just what I did. It was a long journey. I didn't just matriculate, to the next degree. After graduating, there was some time spent, obviously, working in industry, growing as a reporter, and working as a PR professional. And so, definitely, a lot of time thinking and planning, those next steps.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you say that you went to junior college or community college. I think some people discredit how important sometimes a smaller first step is than jumping right into that big university setting. Was that a conscious decision?
I say that to say I could not have jumped into a bigger institution. I had not done anything in high school to be afforded that privilege. And I'm just being candid and honest. And so, one of the things I used to talk to youth about, young people about, was not getting stuck at where you are. Continue to be resilient and continue to fight to move forward. And so, the door to community college opened up for me. I didn't have a whole lot of money. I think I may have had one scholarship to attend. Again, I wasn't born in a family that had a lot of resources. I mean, we were comfortable at times, but again, college was sort of a luxury to a certain degree. And so I made the most of that opportunity and received a 4-year after community college, a scholarship to the 4-year institution where I eventually graduated from. But again, the community college opened doors. And let me say this too, you talk about people who can help connect those dots and bridge those gaps, right? There was a gentleman by the name of Tony Labello, my statistics teacher. I think it was maybe my second semester in school. And, I was having some issues in life and, trying to figure things out. And Tony told me, he said, one day, he said, young man, I'm going to teach you about life. He said, don't worry about statistics. You'll get that at some point. He said, stop by my office a couple of times a week and let's just talk about what's going on with Bryan. And so I'm forever indebted and grateful, to Tony Labello, because there's in some respects, I may not even have a career, if there wasn't a Tony Labello in my life to help guide me in the right direction and connect some of those dots that were missing in the middle between, what I fantasized about being as an adult and what I could become and what I needed to do to get there.
Wow. That's a whole nother tangent we can go off on right there about seeing potential in people, even when they don't see it sometimes in themselves, or they may doubt themselves. But we thank Tony for seeing it in you. And now look at you.
Yeah, I've attempted to reach out to him on multiple occasions over the years. I think he's since retired. Just tried to reach him maybe 2 months ago, but to no avail. I want to say, Tony, hey, thank you for, your contributions and your the wisdom that you brought to my life.
Awesome. Let's talk professional again. If there was a thing you wish you would have known early in your career, what would that have been?
Yeah, great question. I think the power of being intentional, right? Knowing what you want to achieve, knowing what outcome you're looking for, when you start a journey or when you start a career, when you start in college, just being intentional about, how are you going to get to the finish line or how are you going to get that outcome that you so desire. I think that's one of the biggest things that, I think about now doing the latter part of my career, right? I talk a lot about, being intentional, especially again, when I talk to younger people, what do you want to achieve by this decision that you're making today? Where do you see yourself tomorrow? And let's say fail fast. If something's not going to work, don't spend a lot of time, I think, with that endeavor. Fail fast, put together a plan, work the plan, and be very intentional about the long-term or the short-term and long-term outcomes of what you're attempting to achieve.
Yeah, I love that. Fail fast,
Yeah.
Get it in, create failure, create the plan, and then re-engage with the purpose and the intent. I love that.
And constantly reevaluate. Just reevaluate where you are. Again, I think, as far as myself, I entered the workforce 30 years ago, and it's just, I can remember like yesterday, just starting, just starting my career. And I think to myself, wow, where's the time gone? And so, again, the time passes really fast. And I think the more intentional you are, or the more intentional a person is, the better the long-term outcome.
let me ask you this, and this is a combination of two things, of where you are now and what you did prior to becoming a fellow. But just with the fact that you have this opportunity to be a fellow as you were working as a leader in your company, somebody's watching this. What advice would you give someone besides the intentionality of how do you put yourself in a position, one, to be in leadership, and then also to be afforded additional opportunities like the fellowship that you're currently in? What does it take? How do you prepare? Can you prepare? Are there secrets to this magic that you have, Dr. Daniels?
No, there are no secrets. There's some things that you can do to be effective and be good at what you do. I think just the commitment, right? The commitment and the dedication to whatever you're working on. I think that ultimately produces leadership, right? If you give 100%, you make mistakes along the way, but you correct those mistakes and you try again. And again, I'll say this, I do think access and exposure to leaders within organizations at the end of the day do impact outcomes as it relates to what you can do, but you have to be good at what you do as well. And so, again, I think, you asked me about that DE&I question earlier. And I think, again, those connections to influencers or people at the top who can recognize the ability and the talents of others, that may be similar of the path that they've journeyed, that they've traveled. I think that does help in the workplace. And so I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I think it really boils down to exposure, and it boils down also to hard work and dedication and just attempting to be the best you can be at whatever your endeavors are.
Yeah. What has been one of your biggest challenges in life?
I've had a lot. And I say that I appreciate this question again, because I think that our ability to overcome our challenges builds resilience, and it builds character, right? And it makes us who we are today. I've had a number of failures in life, and again, self-inflicted in many cases. And I go back to, my earlier years growing up. I lost my grandfather at the age of 17. He was tragically killed in an incident, and that really impacted my life. He was the biggest male role model or influence at that time. My father was around, but I just genuinely loved my grandfather. And but him being taken away from me was a big impact. Sent me into a tailspin to a certain degree. I made some decisions that weren't necessarily the best decisions at the time. Or shortly after his death, trying to process, what was it I was going to do in life? What was I going to be in life? And how was I going to sort of turn this ship, right? And so with the help of a lot of people, the Tony Labellos of the world, the elders that were in the NAACP Youth Council, people that were in my church, they were people who, believed in me, helped me to see the bigger picture, and helped me correct, in some cases, the ship. And so, again, just dealing with, a lot of challenges and dealing with failure and dealing with a lot of uncertainty really has helped me, I guess, become this wise graybeard that I am today. And again, I wouldn't change anything, again, because it's part of, that prescriptive journey. It's part of my life. It's part of the book that was written, I think, even before my existence.
I love your honesty. As I'm sitting here listening to you, I would want to say you're the get back up kid, right? You've had a lot of things happen in life, but I think for many people who are listening and watching, you are an example that even broken ships still float.
I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
And again, I try not to do this work, again, from a place of privilege, right? Because, I like your analogy of a broken ship. There's so many broken ships out there, and I can see them, and if given an opportunity to talk to those individuals, given an opportunity for them to hear my story, it provides the motivation, I would think, or at least it, plants a seed in that individual that, hey, things will get better. And that, hey, anything is possible. I can still achieve, my dream or my goal in life. And so, again, beautiful analogy. And I think I'll use that moving forward.
Yeah. because I think about you and I think about what you're doing now with equity. You have been broken. We as a people are broken, but you keep saying this word resilience.
Right.
After everything that has happened to us over centuries, we still stand. We're still doing what many would say is impossible after the policies and the slavery and the Jim Crow and the redlining and the housing, all of that. We're still here. We're still making millionaires, right? We're still earning degrees. So we're a broken ship of people, but baby, we're still floating.
You know what? And many of us are still steadfast American, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
despite again, I read a lot about the atrocities of slavery and the policies that have impacted our company. But I think we still believe, many of us believe in this country. That we know that there's a lot that needs to be fixed, obviously. And we're rolling up our sleeves and we're trying to make that happen even today, just as our ancestors and just as our great civil rights leaders did before us.
Yeah. What is your biggest accomplishment to date?
Yeah. Again, great question. I would say selfishly earning my PhD. It was a difficult journey. It started in 2013. I completed my studies in 2020, 7-year experience, learned a lot along the way. I met many wonderful people along the way. I lost many wonderful people along the way. But again, for a young man who said, I'll tell you, I used to tell my mom, I'm not going to college. It was just flat out, I'm not going to college. And so again, once that ship, got righted or corrected, I've been a lifelong learner ever since. And I do believe that education is the key to transforming an individual's life. I believe in the power of education. I've seen it firsthand. Again, and I come from a family of educators and people that have attended college, but it was just something that me that made me a little bit deviant, at an early age. But again, achieving the PhD and everything that I've learned along the way, and all of the opportunities that I've been afforded since earning the PhD. So it's been a life changer for me.
If you were granted just one wish, what would it be?
So I have 2 wishes. In fact. Sorry about that, but I do. And so, because I figured you were going to ask me this question. One wish would be for my mother to see me today. I lost her in 2012, a year before I started the program, but I had been accepted to my PhD program. So she knew that, if I started that program, I would finish that program. And so in many ways, I know she knows that, I've achieved that goal, not only for myself, but for the family. But I really wish that she were here. And I say that because I completed my studies in April of 2020. It was right at the height of COVID, right? And so our graduation ceremonies were canceled. And so we had to do the ceremony virtually. And so the university just extended an opportunity for the class of 2020 and 2021 to participate in upcoming ceremonies that will occur here in about a month and a half. So my one wish would be for her to be present and to see me walk across that stage. And I also second that, but I had a beloved uncle who believed in me, took the journey with me, but I lost him in June of 2020. So my 2 wishes would be for those 2 individuals to participate and see me walk across the stage in the next month and a half, and sometime in May.
Wow. Well, I think now I can afford you those 2 wishes. I'll let you
appreciate that. Thank you.
Those deserving wishes.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Let's talk about your relationship with BDN. How long have you been with us, and what are you looking forward as we get onto this journey together?
Yeah, so BDN was a godsend for me, right? You go through this PhD journey and you finish, and I'm not in the academy, so I'm not around other PhDs on a day-to-day basis. And so BDN for me gives me a network of scholars, of thought partners, and to toss around ideas and to see what's going on in the academy. And it also gives me inspiration, right? for what I can become, what I can do, or how I can contribute to the academy, and not only the academy, but to the lives of young people. And so I really appreciate the network. I appreciate, hearing the stories of, other individuals and other scholars that have gone the journey as well. Again, quite remarkable and inspirational. And I appreciate the opportunity, again, to connect with you, Christopher, to tell my story and be a part of this wonderful organization.
Well, we are definitely blessed to have individuals like you. I think we've only really scratched the surface of who Dr. Daniels is. There is a story, guys, here that we all don't know, but what we see before us is a polished individual who has, as he said, made mistakes, picked himself back up, dusted himself off, and created a new destiny for himself. So thank you so much for joining me today. It has truly been a pleasure. Will you please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you do?
So can I make a comment on your last remark, just to pivot a little bit? And so, I appreciate the opportunity to tell this story and how I've overcome some odds. But again, I have to give thanks, and I have to acknowledge and recognize the people along the way who have encouraged me and have been in my corner and who have championed, my cause in life, and the fact that I could add purpose to my life and to my community. So again, thank you.
Okay.
So if you want to find out more about the work that I'm doing, please visit ceoactionracialequity.com. That's ceoactionracialequity.com. And from time to time, I do share sort of my insights and my thoughts on the Medium platform. And so you can find me at BC Daniels, at BC Daniels on Medium.
Awesome. Well, I went and checked him out, guys. So I want you to follow suit and do what I did and go check out Dr. Daniels on all of his social media, on his website, and check him out on the CEO for Racial Equity. He's there. He's doing great work. And we can't wait to see what happens with this work as you go back into the corporate sector to really engage in these communities a little bit more. Now, while you're doing that, guys, don't forget to go and connect with the Black Doctoral Network as well on all of our social media channels. We would love to engage with you as well. But for now, that's it, guys. What a great show. What a great guest. What great information. Don't forget to join us again next time, where we will have another phenomenal interview for you. Until then, guys, be safe, be blessed. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Until then, see you next time.